Today we're going to be talking about how to write engaging digital headlines online, because this is critical in whatever role you serve. Part of this deck is going to highlight the challenges of publishing to multiple platforms, in the Tribune's case, newspapers and digitally, but the lessons are broader than that. It would be just as relevant to a magazine or trade publication, plus the takeaways focus solely on what resonates with a digital audience, regardless of where it started. So while this is told through the Tribune, it's really about how to headline digital content overall. This is going to be our quick agenda today. This is probably going to be about a 45-minute listen, so you may want to go get a drink or something. First, I'll make a case for why headlines matter. That will be a very easy case to make. We'll then explore 15 key takeaways born from the Tribune's own self-analysis, occasionally embarrassing. And then I'll highlight some workflow ideas where it may not be relevant immediately right now as a student, but moving ahead, I think in any kind of content creation field will make a lot of sense. We're going to spend most of the time talking through real examples of headline improvements at the Tribune, all of which doubled at least real-time traffic to the story. Now at the Tribune, we use Chartbeat to do real-time analytics. You see this little green number here. This means this is the most clicked item on the home page, and if these two chevrons here being up shows you that it's increasing in velocity, that it's green instead of like white or red, also shows you that it is performing above the average for stories in that position. Now there is one weakness to this data, right, because this is focusing on headlines where we changed them and improved the engagement. Headlines that kind of were awesome from the start kind of came through, and those aren't part of this data set. So here's a really good one. Joe Walsh, who promises to vote for Chuy Garcia if he's proved wrong, is proved wrong. Right? It's crisp, there's a lot of nouns in there, it's kind of fun, makes perfect sense. This is not a headline that needed a lot of help from us. So in the data set that we looked at here over really the course of 5 years, a headline that starts out strong is not going to be part of that one. We focused more on the misses than the hits. Now, Will Aremus in Slate frankly said it best. Local media routinely fail to emphasize the most interesting aspects of amazing news stories. It hurt a bit when I first read this, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized he is exactly right. Here was the example he built this around. Woman tells Putnam County deputy that son 4 shot her in the back while she was driving. It's kind of an okay headline, realistically. It doesn't really offend me too much. But this is what the Daily Mail did. Not that I'm endorsing anyone to go the Daily Mail route, but they clearly found a better story within the context of the content available below. Pro-gun Florida mom is accidentally shot by her 4-year-old son while driving after the boy found her pistol in the back seat, just a day after she bragged about his shooting skills. This was how it started. This is kind of boring. This is what they felt the story was. The headline's too long. Perhaps it's a little sensational. But there's a sense that they saw a story, they wanted to make sure it was resonating with the audiences, they tried a lot of things, and this is what they ended up with. Now, that could never happen at the Tribune, right? Nope. We struggle with this all the time. Even last year, last month, last week. Here's a great story we've been writing a lot on. Green card veteran faces deportation, starts hunger strike. I mean, there's a lot there that kind of sounds good. You see a veteran faces deportation. That's interesting. Hunger strike. See a nice photo of the dad holding the flag. So, kind of interested. People have kind of maybe a loose idea of what a green card is, but not exactly. Well, this is what Slate did to our headline here. Army veteran with PTSD who has lived in the U.S. since he was 8, likely to be deported. Much more compelling, much more on him, much more personal. And that story, even with the boring headline it had here, did very well for us. Part of the reason was because as people shared it, like Spencer Woodman here, who had 43,000 retweets of our story, they pulled out the same information. ICE arrested a U.S. Army veteran who served 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. And they put his name and said he lived here since he was 8. So the most compelling parts of the story He has PTSD. He served 2 tours of duty. He's lived in the U.S. since he was a kid. All excluded from our headline, but in the most engaging ways put in on the others. Why is this happening at the Tribune? Pretty simple, because part of the Tribune is still a newspaper, and newspaper headlines and digital headlines are very, very different. Now, not right or wrong, not good or bad, just different. Even if you look at this picture of the newspaper I have here, you're not even sure what some of these headlines are. Like here, probing a matter of trust. That's literally about a reverend who embezzled money from a Milwaukee church. I would not recommend probing any headline involving clergy misdeeds. And sailing toward uncertainty, that is about a coal ship polluting Lake Michigan. But there's these kind of propensity to use these kind of vague banner headlines because you have a little more context than print. So we'll take a look at a couple other ones that got sent over and see if they really made sense to everyone here. Here's a good one. Returning to the Prairie. Now, I'm sure everyone knows exactly what this story is about the second you see it. Why? It's about a guy who sold his rich, opulent North Shore home and spent all that money in the last decade creating a prairie garden up in Wisconsin. It was obvious here, wasn't it? Here's another one. 7 months later, a gift to mom. Well, you think something's up there. It looks like a mugshot, maybe. What's this gift to mom? Oh, yeah. A man was charged with murder of her aspiring chef's son in the Logan Square neighborhood in Chicago. That is the gift to mom. So, quite right on. Obviously, those headlines may be very effective in print, or frankly, they may not. But they need a lot of work online. Now, why is this happening to the Tribune? Kind of 2 big reasons. One, there's a strong debate and a strong difference in what a non-digital media headline is supposed to do. If you're in a newspaper, it's supposed to capture a moment or compliment a package. It should be clever, it should get your attention, it should do a whole lot of things, right? Digitally, leaving SEO aside, search engine optimization, just for a second, the digital headline's only job is to make you want to read the story, period. Other things like how long you read it for, if you share it, and what you do next are all mostly functions of UX, platform, and content. Here's a great one. This was Cubs finally won their first world championship in 108 years. So big at last, big picture. You have a lot of context here as what's going on. This was a really strong headline for the newspaper. In fact, it was so strong that the Philadelphia Inquirer decided to rip us off a little bit later. But hey. But online, this wouldn't have made a lick of sense. Not quite as cool, right? Now, one of the reasons is because there's just simply less context online. In a newspaper, a story might get a subhead, a pull quote, a graphic, a photo. Online, you just do not get that kind of sumptuous setting. And in this distributed publishing era, the source may be harder to discern off-site, which in many cases suggests kind of a geographical or topical context. If it's the Boston Globe, you could assume this is from Boston or Massachusetts, or the Houston Chronicle, same thing there. And if you're looking at just a headline and a link, it's like an RSS feed or an e-reader, it won't tell you what section it is. That might give you a clue that Brady in the headline means Tom or Jim, not bunch. Here's a great example. So, city sleeps as its children perish. So, here in print, you see, so this is Darlene Glanton here. This is a column. And in newspaper terms, this ragged right, that's code for a column. You see a couple photos, you see a subhead, you see a lot of pieces to understand what this is. When this was moved online, it had that same headline, City sleeps as its children perish. But what does that really mean? Nothing online. Frankly, the subhead here, in Chicago, we mourn young lives lost, but our empathy doesn't linger too long, is probably a better headline. And again, I just can't stress how critical this is. Online, a bad headline on a good story means fewer people read that story. You must have a certain sense of desperation in writing web headlines, like those 8 words are the difference between that feature's life or death. Mostly because those words often are. So here's what we're going to go through, the rules of engagement for this whole presentation. I'm going to chiefly be discussing writing for readers here. That's the point, not for search engine optimization. SEO will be a consideration I'll bring up at times, but mostly we're talking about people creating headlines for people. Makes it better for social too. Number 2, this is more work at first. I'm not going to lie to you. If you're going to really start caring about headlines, I don't care where you're working, it is going to be more resource intensive. You're going to be thinking harder. You're going to be collaborating more, but at least it becomes easier down the road. 3, and most important, is readers are very unpredictable. There are many times where we've seen kind of opaque headlines succeed and compelling headlines absolutely founder. Part of headline writing is science, but it's also art. And the science we're getting at are these changes that double traffic real time. Here's our tips, all based on less than optimal examples here at the Tribune. Number 1, and there's no more important tip than this, be clear and fact-rich. There is, I say it right here, nothing more important than clarity. Nothing. Straight headlines are not dull, they are lean and effective. Specifics like numbers are absolutely awesome. Here's a great headline. Chicago cop fired for shooting at wrong car 16 times in off-duty incident. Look, you have context. Happened in Chicago. He was fired, so you know the outcome already. Look, he shot at the wrong car 16 times, so you get a sense of scale right now. This was not just he squeezed off one bullet. He shot 16 times at the wrong car, and oh my goodness, he wasn't even on duty. It was an off-duty incident. That is a fact-rich, really strong headline. Gives you everything you want to know. In newspaper terms or something like, or magazine terms, might not be kind of sweepy enough, but I'm telling you that is an effective headline online. Part of being clear at times is stating what the writer and editor believe to be very obvious. Homeowners face tax hike under mayor's budget plan. This makes sense if your readers come from a single town, but how likely is that? So I would say one of the first things you do to make headlines more effective is give a sense of place. Even for us, the Chicago Tribune, we have 7 other daily newspapers under the Chicago Tribune umbrella and 31 weekly papers. We cover like 125 immediate Chicago suburban towns. Homeowners face tax hike doesn't tell you if this is Chicago or Naperville or Elgin or Gary, Indiana. So Chicago homeowners face tax hike under Mayor Emanuel's budget plan is not only more clear, it's also better for SEO too. And by fact-rich, we don't mean assume the reader will get to the good stuff once they click on the story. You want a reward to kind of build some drama, but give them a taste of what that good stuff is. Local colleges offer stress-busting activities. This is a pretty rough headline. You're not sure where it is, and what's a stress-busting activity? You see a picture of what looks like a pony there. It's not a massage or something. We changed it to this headline, and traffic more than doubled within 6 seconds. Therapy horses bubble wrap rooms aim to relieve college students' end-of-semester stress. Again, we gave them a sense of what the details were. Here's another one. Deploying multiple tools key to stopping Asian carp advance, researchers say. I'm not really sure what multiple tools are, but I can't imagine many tools that are going to stop fish. Well, here we go. This headline change had a much better impact. Poison pills, noise cannons. Researchers use arsenal of weapons to fight Asian carp. Rich words, a sense of this is what we're talking about. Mayor Emanuel releases police plan. This is the headline equivalent of City Council met last night. Emanuel's police plan calls for every street cop to be equipped with taser by summer. Probably they should have kept Mayor Emanuel there, but again, the end result here was more than doubling real-time traffic on the story by giving a sense of what the police plan was. That's a critical part of the story. The Daily Show in Chicago dishes deep on the city. Oh, a Chicago deep dish pizza pun. These are my favorites. Again, you see what they were trying to do there, sort of, but there's no sense of what the story's about. This, and you can see by the 4 and 2 chevrons up, kind of the chart beat footprint of story improving, did much better. Trevor Noah broaches city's violence, segregation in Daily Show taped in Chicago. Number 2, add context. Even facts need help. Good headlines help put the story in perspective by telling the reader why this is important. Illinois universities grapple with sanctuary campus efforts. And that's really not a bad headline. You get a sense of place, understand sanctuary cities and sanctuary campus efforts. But this one immediately did better, more than doubling real-time audience on a story. Illinois universities reject sanctuary campus label amid Trump's deportation threats. It was the timing that was most important on this. That context was critical to understanding what was going on and to give you a sense of what was at stake. Lawmakers question pricing of Northbrook Company's $89,000 MD drug. That's a pretty good headline. I mean, $89,000 is a lot of money. You have a sense of place in Northbrook. There's some controversy. So that's a pretty effective headline. But what made it better was context. Northbrook Company's $89,000 muscular dystrophy drug is sold for $1,000 in other countries. That far more compelling. Here's kind of an arcane one from a story that we probably write a few times a year. County Land Bank offers more than 4,000 vacant lots for sale. So, whether it's a demolition or a rehab, counties and towns just kind of accrue property and kind of throw them out and sell them every now and then. What's a little kind of lost here is why? What's the point of this? Hoping for adrenaline boost in flagging neighborhoods, Cook County selling more than 4,000 vacant lots. We have a sense of what they're trying to accomplish. Plus, you have Cook County for us, which is important as we takes in the city of Chicago, not just any county. Cook County, again, seeks $400,000 in amusement taxes from Evil Olive and Beauty Bar. Again, this is kind of a fact-rich headline. Now, Evil Olive and Beauty Bar aren't huge bars, but they aren't insignificant. But the real part of the story, kind of the beating heart of the story, wasn't just taxes from a couple bars. The real part was this: is music by a DJ fine art? Cook County judge may decide. You literally had a case where there's an exemption for fine art from bars, and the county was debating, thinking, well, the DJ is not really art, so maybe that should be taxable, unlike a jazz show or a blues show. Always favor proper nouns in headlines, include names, teams, and locations. Only use the most common acronyms. Again, make it really readable, really conversational. Also helps with SEO. Also realize that sometimes being vague may be beneficial. Is the incident more important than the locale? Is the law more important than who proposed it? Both approaches have their place, just know when to use them. Here's a good one. It's very specific, very fact-rich. Rare A5 Wagyu at Roca Acor. Now, Roca Acor is not a very big restaurant here in River North. However, little less specificity. Some of the world's most expensive beef on sale at River North Restaurant. Again, being more vague, less specificity, certainly helped this story out. Huge North Shore school referendum got legislative help, splits community. This headline's probably trying to do a little bit too much, and what does legislative help even mean? What does splits community mean? That's a kind of difficult, nebulous terms to kind of come to grips with. This actually more than quintupled traffic to it. North Shore School District's nearly $200 million referendum causing a civil war in Highland Park. Adding a little number, giving a little more specific sense of place, and kind of pulling out the emotion with a quote. My favorite example in this whole deck. Farrell grateful for Gable apology, but wants him out of all sports. I am sure you all know exactly what this story is about, right? It's about a speed skating sex scandal, of course, but that was very clear here, right? Again, that was just too specific. It needed to be more vague. Number 4, write it so it reads fast. Front-load critical words into your headline. This also helps with SEO. Florence Henderson, TV's Carol Brady, dies at 82. Don't start with TV's Carol Brady. Florence Henderson is the important part here. And attribution, while very important, can come last. Nowhere in the journalist's Bible, and I know I've looked, do you have to start with attribution. So, police confirm serial killer escaped from jail is far less effective than serial killer escaped from jail, police confirm. Get to the point fast. You can back-end attribution. Number 5, write in an active voice. Again, unless you shouldn't. Here's a great example. Oversight agency releases video of fatal shooting by Chicago police on South Side. Is that oversight agency really the most important part of what's going on? No. So video of fatal police shooting on Chicago's South Side released. You can actually write in a passive construction and accomplish the same thing. In this case, that oversight agency in Chicago, it used to be IPRA, now it's COPA, is not the focus of the story. The second is passive, but much, much more effective. It puts the focus on the video, not the lesser-known agency, and move key details closer to the front. That is your goal. On number 6, don't be clickbaity. Being compelling does not mean you have to treat readers like children. DuPage County town named most boring in nation. Okay, that, you get a sense, geographic sense of, if you click in the story, where it's going to be. Not, guess which suburb was named the nation's most boring. That sounds like something a television Facebook page would post or tweet. Again, clarity first. You erode brand trust and confidence if you're just teasing and never delivering. Don't play the guess what band is coming to town game. Just be a reliable source of information. Here's an interesting one. Chicago students' meningitis death closes school. This could apply. There are 50,000 students in the Chicago public school system. This is almost scare tactics. It's so vague. In this case, saying it's Lindblom Academy actually made the story look better, because rather than kind of being vague about everything there, people understood exactly what was going on and where it applied to, and yet they were still interested. This is a good one. I thought this was a very effective use of, starting out to have this discussion, but not being clickbaity. No, Mary Nagasu does not have a giant USA tattoo on her inner thigh. We don't say, does she have a tattoo on her inner thigh of USA? We just already answer the question, get out in front of it. But again, it still did very well, because it was a question people had after the Winter Olympics. And it was athletic tape, by the way. Is the author important? Consider including her or his name. Often, who writes a story is as important as the story itself. Plus, it often gives context. People read stories for a lot of reasons. They might trust the brand. They might trust the person. It might be a great headline. Weigh that when you're talking about how to share it on social media and write a headline. Another good one is to ask a critical question. I don't know if the story pay off the answer. I've kind of talked about this before in class. But use this deliberately and sparingly. Equally, if not more effective, is when the headline teases the answer to an intriguing question. Here's a good one. Medical advances in care of aging zoo animals lead to difficult questions. Well, what's a difficult question? Should aging zoo animals be euthanized? That's a pretty difficult question. That gets to the heart of it right away. Use descriptive and evocative words, terms that inspire or amuse or anger. University of Pennsylvania study suggested that eliciting that emotional response is the critical reason that content goes viral. So don't fear an adjective. Choose words and phrases with some power. Jeb Bush says he is not thinking about presidential bid. We could have put this headline on 500 stories leading up to the Republican primary. But if you have a little fun with it, Jeb Bush calls media crack addicts after more presidential pestering. This is a much more compelling headline for the day. Make it specific. No one took the lazy route here on a headline. This was an interesting one. And this was the example I showed earlier at the beginning of this deck. Fans using resale market oppose Cubs' absolute discretion to revoke tickets. Now, you kind of get a sense. Here's a super Cubs fan. You've got Cubs in there. You know it's talking about tickets. But this headline was a little too vague and didn't really attract people like we kind of thought it was going to. When we kind of pulled at it a little, fight between Cubs fan team highlights tenuous ownership of season tickets. We found by playing up that conflict and getting a little more specific on what we were talking about, we got a much larger audience. And again, if you saw at the beginning of this video, beginning of this slide, it was, I think, 7 times the audience within 6 seconds. Avoid puns. Oh my God. Newspapers love puns. May you all never have to deal with this. Why should you avoid puns? Because you convey a light tone. You assume the reader gets the joke. You assume there's no language barriers. You assume originality, that your pun hasn't been used dozens and dozens of times already. And worse, you assume that there's nothing more interesting in the story. Here are some fine examples. Students hope for pizza the action. Get it? It's really funny. Chicago. How about this one? Wrestlers grappling with Hastard's place in history. Well, that would be really funny because Dennis Hastert, who was the former Speaker of the House, who is embroiled and convicted essentially for hiding a sex scandal, this would be a really great headline if you weren't making actually a joke about child sex abuse. DUI suspect up a creek following police pursuit in Lyons and Brookfield. Literally, the guy jumped out of his car during a police chase, swam across the river, and was arrested. He wasn't really up a creek so much as he literally swam across a creek. Taylor Swift makes Mount Greenwood girl's heart sing. Girl was sick, and she has since died, and Taylor Swift gave her a call. None of that is in this story. But, Taylor Swift, she's a singer. Get it? Walmart officer bullish on alleged drink thief. Yeah, the guy stole 20 cases of Red Bull. They called him the Red Bull Bandit. Get it? Actually, he was caught, so if anything, the cop would be bearish on the alleged drink thief. Piano tuner made key decision 40 years ago. Get it? Yeah, I know. This is a great example here. Here was a story. This was one of our top stories of last year. And it was only a top story. It only did nearly as well as it could have. You unlocked the potential once the headline was changed. The original headline was, after a boy sneaks into a basketball gym, a Skokie police officer makes a generous assist. Get it? Basketball assist? What was the story really about? A Skokie cop could have arrested a teen who kept sneaking into a gym. Instead, he bought him a membership. Turns out the kid's family couldn't afford to pay for his membership anymore. The fitness center, I think it was Export Fitness, kept on reporting this kid was sneaking in there. Cop caught the kid in the bathroom, learned what happened, and said, you know what, I'm going to buy you an annual membership here. This is a great, moving story, but it isn't about a generous assist pun. It's about this cop saw a moment to buy the kid a membership. That's a really great story, but it wasn't in the headline. Number 11, have a great quote, use it. If you're stuck, this is usually the shortest path to a unique headline. Trump testifies in Chicago about condo deal. It's an okay headline. You get Trump, you get Chicago. Trump takes stand in condo deal. I don't want to be braggadocious. Just pulling it out makes it a lot more compelling and interesting. You can almost hear the president saying this. Probably we shouldn't have lost Chicago in the headline. I think probably should have stayed, but you get a sense of what that this is a more compelling kind of read. You want to know what else he said when you get a quote like this. Bottom line is some words just suck. Headlines should read like people talk. Here are some jargony, vague, terrible headline words I encourage you all to avoid. Or if you want to do something really fun, try to put like 10 of them in a single headline. Police jeered incident and created flap as protocol was violated by whatever. The important part here is make headlines conversational. And for us, we just were packing them up with newspapery headlines constantly. Think beyond the lead. The headline has to promote the most engaging element, whether that's a number, a quote, a fact, a thought, a topic, opinion. Maybe that's a few paragraphs in. Now, occasionally, it raises a larger question about story structure. If the best part of the story is kind of not the lead or not up high in the story, did the original story maybe try to do too much? Maybe it wasn't on point. We had a really interesting example here of a political story that kind of started out one way, but ended up going another. Ex-U.S. Senator Mark Kirk may open lobbying offices in Washington and Highland Park. That's how this published. That, not that interesting of a story. We noticed people were sharing it on social media a specific way, so we started to bend the headline towards how they were sharing it, because later on in the story it mentioned that, oh yeah, white Republicans didn't get to go on Air Force One. So we kind of split the difference, you know. He was going to become a lobbyist, and that white Republicans didn't get to go on Air Force One, which, by the way, we later learned wasn't true. He was invited on Air Force One multiple times. Eventually, we restructured the whole story and ended up with ex-Senator Mark Kerr complained white Republicans were not invited on Air Force One. This was a big story that went national. Again, later debunked, though. Here's another one. This is kind of a perfunctory headline, you know, death toll rises following earthquake in Pakistan. Now, we covered this story for days when it happened, but we noticed that, you know, there was an interesting kind of topographical, you know, thing that happened. And when we put this out there, new island formed after massive quake in Pakistan, then it got a whole lot more engagement, just because this was a more unique approach to it. Impact is critical. Be clear in conveying your readers and viewers how this coverage will affect them. Again, tell the story. Tell people how this story affects them. Tell them how they're in the story. Exelon teams up with Big Coal in subsidy-filled Springfield bill. Now, Springfield is our state capital here, so that's kind of code for, you know, for a bill, for any kind of action the lawmakers will be taking. But, you know, I hope most people know in Illinois that's our capital, but probably some don't. I'm sure they don't know what Big Coal really means, but they probably know what this means. Illinois energy bill may cost consumers an additional $24 billion, opponents say. That hits you in your pocketbook. That's how this story affects you. Think twice before buying breast milk online, study. Well, why? Maybe? Oh yeah, most breast milk sold online contains dangerous bacteria. That is why. This is how it affects you. Here's a good one. Your lobster roll addiction is contributing to a price spike. Now, I've searched the CDC website, and a lobster roll addiction is not a real thing. But if you put some context in there, current spike in lobster prices not seen in 10 years, then you get a sense of exactly what's going on. Uber expects to cha-ching in the new year with 2 million rides. I really don't care too much about what Uber is going to do or not going to do. This isn't a story about Uber. This is, of course, a story about price surges, elevated fares, and then outages on New Year's Eve. That is a story about people. This is a story about a company. Always favor people. Jumbo size hitch in Wrigley talks. What's a jumbo size hitch? Oh yeah, they wanted a big, giant video screen inside their ballpark, which they got, which I have to say is also pretty cool. Number 15, and this is probably the most important tip. Just be sharp and focused. Make absolutely sure that the single most interesting, most compelling part of your story is conveyed in your headline. Note single, don't try to do 100 things. Field Museum launching limited edition beer. Okay, Chicago's Field Museum launching a beer. That's kind of interesting. Might care about that. Then again, there's so many kinds of beers, I might not. Field Museum to sell beer based on 1,000-year-old recipe. Now you got me. Gotta be honest though, had it, wasn't very good. Still, good story. This is the headline it should have had. It did. Man found in burning garage identified. Okay, so that's sad. Is there some context? Where? Anything? Gary man who was acquitted of murder identified as man found in burning van. That is immediately more compelling. Mount Prospect's cops seek home intruder scared off by girl's screams, semicolon, video released. You see a semicolon in the headline, that is always a cue for someone's probably struggling. The headline is probably trying to do too much. Here, and again, you can kind of see with the cursor here, you know, the spike when the headline first changed here, and it go green on chart view number 4. Video shows home invader kick in door of Mount Prospect home, run from girl screams. You get an immediate sense there's a video on the story, you're able to kind of watch it and see it, and this is what's going to happen. That is a compelling headline. Meteor credited for bright light, noise rattling Michigan. Well, meteors don't usually demand credit or attribution for light, and we're in kind of Chicago, a noise-rattling Michigan really isn't that impressive. But meteor over Midwest explodes in brilliant fireball with the force of a mild earthquake. Now that's a headline. It has some fun words, it's compelling. Immediately did much better on our real-time metrics. People were coming to it at a so much faster clip. In fact, that much faster. Invasive mussels help Lake Michigan surpass Superior in clarity, but threaten food chain. Now, there is no secret Midwest clarity war between Lake Michigan and Lake Superior, I assure you. So this really isn't a story about invasive mussels. Actually, what this story is about is actually more interesting. Lake Michigan's waters have become dramatically clearer in the last 20 years, but at a steep cost. It turns out our water's getting clearer, but that's a bad thing to the environment. So when we launched this very long, kind of nice story here, we were kind of trying different headlines, and we were finding ways people were engaging with it. And it was that dichotomy, clear water is bad, that was having the most chance to kind of attract people. Then a little later, Lake Michigan's once brownish waters have become clear blue. Experts fear an ecological desert. Again, that same thing, playing off the dichotomy, the clear water is bad. Now, how do we at the Tribune kind of do these headlines here? I'll go through some workflow stuff here. It's going to be unique to wherever you're working, TV station, PR agency, whatever, but I think there's some pieces that do apply outside of just our own newsroom. Number one, if the deadline isn't now, always write multiple headlines. Pre-write all project-level stories. We have a document where we'll get an argument, weeks in advance. Like, here's the headline we want, and then here are 4 or 5 other headlines that we'll try going into it. But don't treat every headline like it's something oh my God, it's not working, let's do something now, it's a disaster. Plan for it. The target length of a headline should be around 75 characters, but be very willing to exceed it for the right headline. Roughly to a max of 110 characters. That's kind of at that point, it appears that Google will no longer care about some words after 110. But I will say this, just like that Skokie police story, like if you find headline nirvana, go longer. Go as long as you need to go. Our study of Google News headlines revealed an average of 62 characters, but some were as long as 309. So don't pad just to pad, but don't fear a tight headline count if you have that headline nirvana. Watch real-time metrics for headlines. Be prepared to act. If you've got a great piece, don't just let it linger. So Parsley, Chartbeat, there's a lot of real-time metrics software that essentially updates every 3 to 6 seconds and showing you how much audience is on that piece. If it's not getting the kind of response you think it's going to be getting, be prepared to act. Don't be satisfied with an okay headline. Try stuff. And then for us, headline very much is a team sport. We talk about them a lot, usually on Slack. This is an interesting exchange that I captured on Slack here between myself, our business digital producer, and one of our news producers. Alex Parker is business, and Char Johnson is Charlie Johnson, who is a digital editor here. But he got an interesting story. Wisconsin beats out Illinois for Foxconn LCD plant, iPhone maker Foxconn open plant in southeastern Wisconsin. And he was basically like, well, what's the headline? Do we alert it? And then he said he was still mulling. And I said right away, not LCD, please. No one knows what a liquid crystal display is, more general. And Charlie right away was like, well, maybe it's just a business alert. I chimed back in there, as I like to do, Apple supplier, that no one really knows what Foxconn is. They're an iPhone maker or Apple supplier. Then I get at the bottom, I start thinking about, well, how many jobs? Wasn't it like 3K jobs or something like that? That's key to the story. This is going to be a regional job story more than anything else. Charlie's seeing the job opportunities saying, yeah, maybe it's an alert for both news and business. And we argue here about like what kind of jobs we have, whether it's an Apple supplier or iPhone, looking at where the 3,000 job figure is from. We're talking, we're taking time, we're having a discussion. And then Alex says, well, we reported it could bring 10,000 jobs to southern Wisconsin. So then, right at that point, both myself, Alex, or myself, Alex, and Charlie all come with the same kind of headline. Apple supplier Foxconn to open factory in southern Wisconsin may bring 10,000 jobs. iPhone maker Foxconn to open Wisconsin plant possibly bring 10,000 jobs to region. And iPhone maker Foxconn announced a new factory in Wisconsin. So right there, between essentially all at 11:17 a.m., we all had the same headline, but it took that discussion to do it. And then we alerted it and headlined it with this job-focused, impact-focused headline, which is what everyone should be doing. So in summary, understand the limitations of digital headlines. Don't summarize, engage. Be very specific, be very conversational. And most of all, desperately try to be interesting. Like, this is a really good headline. I mean, this headline made this great story. But this is also a good headline. It's lean, it's fact-rich, it's powerful in its own way. They're very different. They're both very effective for what they are. Okay, thanks guys.